Hello everybody and welcome to the eSports Federation panel in which we try to put together ideas to create the Australian Esports Federation. Thank you everyone who waited in line on this cold and dreary day for this panel. I really appreciate it. My name's Zorine. I am the Esports and Community Manager at GameSpot Australia, and I'll just introduce each of my panelists who are with me today. So on my left, I have PJ Russell. If you could put your hand up, PJ. He is the Esports and Community Manager of Australia and New Zealand for Blizzard Entertainment. Next to him, we have Nick Vanzetti, who is the Managing Director of the Australian Cyber League. And on the end there, Lloyd Smith, who is the General Manager for Team Immunity. So we have a variety of panelists here today, and we'll be brainstorming ideas in creating an esports federation for Australia. Now, we will be taking questions as well throughout the duration of the panel, so feel free to signal, put your hand up, and the enforcers will come around with wireless microphones. But to start off, the first talking point we have, the benefits of establishing an Australian Esports Federation. Why do we need one? I've got a few talking points myself regarding this, but I will let PJ start off.
Okay.
if he likes.
I don't know if we need one as such, but we definitely need to grow this region. I mean, you can see already how many people we got here, like 100, 200, 300 maybe. People are still coming in the back. There's obviously a passion for esports. I'm not just talking about Blizzard esports or anything like that. I'm talking about general fighting community, first-person shooters, whatever you're into. I mean, people are there and they want it. And I think, speaking of article, Lloyd, I think it was yesterday I saw an article.
Yeah.
And basically one of the quotes that Lloyd said was really cool. It was like, they know about Australia, they know about Australian esports, but they just don't think we matter. So that's probably something sort of to start the discussion too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is an idea that we can take and we can grow it, but there is a lot of work to be involved to do this. And we were having a discussion before quickly about it, that we need this. If we want esports to happen in Australia, if we want to get to the stage like Europe or North America, this is something that needs to happen. Otherwise, we won't have the structure and we won't have the ability to do what they can do over in America and Europe. And so we are playing catch-up game, as I'm sure all of you are well aware, especially all of us. It is hard for us. It is hard for you guys as well to find tournaments with big prize monies or anything like that, or get partnerships to go overseas and experience what it's like to play against the big guys. And creating a panel like this allows us all to do that. So it allows partners to come in, it allows organisers to help out, it allows us as organisations, as team managers, to also to come in and build some sort of panel I guess not really a panel, but some sort of federation that has all the minds in it, that will allow us to grow. But that's definitely the point I was trying to make from that quote. So.
And Nick, you've had a lot of experience in managing events in the esports scene in Australia. What is your opinion of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we just could almost rewind almost 12 months ago, Zorine, when Zorine actually ran a panel previously that sort of introduced this topic, and I just sort of like to say that some steps have been made in the right direction between organisers, at least, in getting to this sort of point. But I want to echo what Lloyd said, that it's going to be a very slow and sort of drawn-out process to get it right and to make the federation happen. So in that 12 months, we've seen a lot of organisers start coordinating, and for those of you that may not be too aware of what was sort of going on in Australia in the last 5 years, we already know that we're behind the rest of the world in esports, but even for organisers, we would have event clashes, competing organisations going for the same kind of audience, but in the first in the last 12 months, we have made some baby steps, but I think the key now is to really sort of flesh out a roadmap of where to go to next.
And just out of curiosity, can I get a show of hands for anyone who has watched or competed in any esports event? Okay, wow.
Right,
Okay,
it's the right audience.
what about what about those who have watched or competed in any Australian esports events? Okay, not
too
as
bad.
much.
Not as many.
Not as many. But, well, I think that's one of the main reasons why the Australian Esports Federation needs to exist, so that people know that we have local events as well. Like everybody watches WCS for StarCraft 2 or LCS for League of Legends, and they may not realize that we have an Australian scene that's ready to take them on and, encourage the local scene to grow.
I don't think it's just the community, but I think it's also the partners as well. So trying to get the sponsors, by partners I mean sponsors, on board, because it is hard out there for organisations, teams to try and get that backing. And by creating a federation like this opens the door for these partners to come in and say, look, we are looking to sponsor a team or an organisation that runs events or whatever it may be, and then it can go from there. Because at the moment, there have been bridges burnt in the past by teams or by other organisations, whatever it may be, and that has made it difficult. I think it's not just about the community, but also about the people supporting the community as well.
I think
with all the partners.
I think it is. It's definitely one of those vicious cycles where if you don't have community watching an event, either online or at the event itself, you don't have those numbers that you can back up and go to a sponsor and actually say, this is how many people, it's really cool, you should definitely show us some money. What do you think, Nick? Is that still like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge because, I'm going to use an example. ACL, which is our community-driven gaming event, we've got an event in Melbourne in 4 weeks. We don't have a PC partner for that at this point. I mean, we've got PCs, but we're running the Riot booth and a big League of Legends tournament, and we don't have a PCs partner for our own event. So it is a big challenge because anything that's officially run by a publisher, by Riot or by Blizzard, will get these huge numbers because it's got that kind of backing. But for some reason, the audience maybe it's just awareness, I think that's a big part, aren't watching some of the smaller events. The same people are playing, the exact same people, but the audience is lower. That makes finding partners more difficult.
I also think that because the scene is so fragmented at the moment, a lot of people are putting in a lot of effort, and there's no, even if you're a player who wants to get into Australian esports or find out what events are happening, there's no real information centre you can go to find all this stuff out. So I think that's one of the reasons why the Australian Esports Federation should exist, to really focus and pinpoint all the information and have it all in one place.
So would you be thinking maybe like a portal or something like that?
Yes, like a website portal, to collate all the effort from everybody and, have, spokespersons from each organisation, not just, organisers of tournaments, but also, developers, publishers, team managers, and media, of course, which is what I aimed to focus on this panel, because we have such an array of panelists here to bring a different angle to the Esports Federation. You also mentioned sharing statistics or going to sponsors sharing statistics. Do you think that is also something that should be done in the Federation, to have all teams and event organisers share statistics of their own events?
Yes. Put it lightly, yes. Because I think, again, if this is going to happen, we need... organisations, teams need to be open and tell the Federation what they want, what they're looking to achieve. And the same goes with partners. Like, for example, the Federation could make up like certain levels for sponsorships. So first level might be $5,000, get a logo on a shirt, whatever it may be. And then you can go the whole way up to 50 grand, 100 grand with the works, basically. But at least that gives the sponsor the framework to work towards, so they know, okay, I want to take level 3 on on a team. And then as a federation, they go, okay, which team do we think would be best? Which team do we think deserves this? Because again, it all comes down to the fact that bridges have been burnt in the past. People have run away with money. I'm being honest. And it's hurt us a lot. It's hurt the Australian community a lot. It's hurt esports in general a lot. And it also puts a bad image out there. And that's not something obviously we want. So, yes.
So moving on to the next step, let's say we do hypothetically try to start plans for an esports federation in Australia today. Who do you think should be participating in the federation itself? Should it be open to everybody, or will that skew the focus? Or should it be select people who have a proven history in the Australian esports scene?
I'll take that one to start.
Yep.
I think obviously, you've got the right idea here today, because I said in the last 12 months a bunch of organisers have sort of been at least communicating, but I don't ring up Lloyd every second week or something, and maybe we need to have that level of everyone working together. In terms of having it open to everyone, I think there needs to be a certain benchmark of what people are looking to do, because running a weekend LAN with 20 people is a little bit different to running an event with 300 people, and we have different objectives. So I think there needs to be some kind of structure in that sense. And then, maybe even some ramifications. If somebody's run away with sponsor money, as Lloyd said, why should they be helping to sort of shape the decisions that Australian esports is making?
I think, especially in the case where somebody has run away with money, like the federation could also exist as sort of like, to make people accountable for their actions.
100%, definitely.
This sounds very police state.
Well, what are your thoughts on that, PJ?
Well, I don't know about the people who have run away with money, so I don't know the examples that Lloyd and Nick are talking about, but I think it should come in from a more positive sort of side. Mm-hmm. Like, it would be great if partners, publishers, community, players, teams all got together, because they're the people who actually care about it. I mean, everyone's got their own little interest, but ultimately we want esports to grow. So I think there's got to be a lot of discussions, and before we can say there's a federation, this is what we're going to do, we need to understand why we need a federation. We need some values. We need some sort of value. Well, I guess, values is probably the best word. Values for saying this is what we want it for, and this is what we're going to follow up with. So.
Okay. So for the operation of the federation itself, who do you think should run it? Should actually be running it? So players, teams, managers, media who are not involved? Or?
If you're saying running it, what would they be doing exactly?
I'd say guiding and facilitating the process of everything that's overseen.
I think it should be a mix of everyone. Well, everyone in terms of the people we just pointed out. I think team managers, organisers like Van's here, community managers, even partners as well. So again, going back to the point of sponsors and partners should be involved, because they're the ones that are going to be making decisions based upon, like we've all got different backgrounds here. I can't really comment on PJ's side of things, nor could he comment on mine. And so having...
Play StarCraft. Thanks.
But by having people from an array of different backgrounds, I would definitely see would be the best way to approach this.
Do you think the federation should have control over existing events and tournaments?
Control's a pretty strong word there. I think some of the ideas that have been bounced around before, and this whole concept is not a new one by any means, so a lot of people have been sort of having the discussion for many years, but just like a set of guidelines would help, as opposed to the word control. Maybe a set of minimum expectations in those guidelines of what someone should be doing when they run an event, or if they're going to be managing a team per se. Obviously, it's up to that team to then follow those guidelines, but I think at least outlining those, minimum standards.
I like that. I mean, especially if you could get tiers, so that people are discussing together, they come to the federation or whatever you want to call it, and they say, we want to do this 3-day event, and then it fits within ththose guidelines of, say, a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 event. So then even the spectators or the community, when they know this is a tier 3 event, it's going to be happening on this date, they'll know what to expect. So there'll be a certain standard, I guess, quality.
Well, yes, and I'm trying to get a feel for what you guys think is an appropriate level of involvement for the federation itself. We don't want them to feel like they're smothering tournaments or even small startup events, which are in danger of not happening at all. So that's the main reason why we're here talking about this today. But moving on, and this is sort of continuing on from what we've just discussed, what role should it play in the scene, do you think, the federation? How active should it be, and how should it be run?
Well, if we want it to
Loaded
work, it'll have to be very active. I mean, if we want it to run and work properly, then I mean, I don't think there's much else to say about that. There would obviously have to be meetings every now and then discussing and looking over these guidelines. I mean, we can't just set guidelines right now and say that's it, done. Every couple of months or whatever, 6 months or whatever it is, we would have to be reworking these guidelines to fit into the culture, because I mean, it does change. New games pop up, and I mean, the new games become more popular, and then I mean, we could have the rule structure for what we think would work for that game. By all means, the organisation doesn't have to use it for their tournament, but at least gives them an idea, and especially that something like that idea would work for the startups. So they know, okay, well, we can go to this federation, they'll give us all the information that we need, and then we can go do our homework and figure out which venue would work and blah, 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 and then they can go from there. And again, using the federation to contact sponsors, to get in contact with organisers who have done it previously, or managers or game publishers or whoever it may be. It's just that hub that Australian eSports does need, but it's just a matter of trying to create that and getting there.
Now, Nick, I know you've run a lot of large-scale events for ACL Pro. How, hypothetically speaking, how involved would you, as the director of the organisation, want to get involved with the Australian Esports Federation, and how much would you want to work with them? On what level?
Well, I'm obviously a believer that it needs to exist, so I'd want to be heavily involved, but not so much to the point that it's going to impact someone else who is trying to do a similar thing, I suppose. Because if it is meant to be a fair and equitable solution with the federation, everybody needs to sort of have their place, I guess. But if we're sort of out, setting these guidelines, I think that critical first meeting of when you decide who's going to be on this initial board, and then setting that first bit of paper that we say, okay, these are these guidelines, and we've decided on these tiers. It's almost like we need to go on a retreat or something and have a little be put into a hotbox scenario where we just all hash it out. I think everybody needs to be involved, but the critical process is something that I guess that we brought up before, is who goes in that first stage.
And PJ, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
I mean, in essence, it's all, from my point of view, it's about quality, and I think if we can get quality events, then community will watch, the international community will watch as well, sponsors will be interested. It's all about sort of setting that level of quality.
Now, in the past, the Australian scene has sort of had, lots of bridges burnt, as Lloyd mentioned before, between teams and organisations. Certain teams and organisations will probably not want to be part of the federation. What do you think is the best way to bring everybody to the table? Another loaded question.
I don't know, it's a hard one, because the way I see it is if you're not on board, then you're not on board, and bad luck to you. Because if, just say we do get this federation off the ground and it gets going, then I don't see why you wouldn't want to be involved. Because you've got everything right there in front of you. You've got access to the partners, you've got access to organising events, you've got this and that. But if you don't want to be involved, then I mean you're just hurting yourself, really. That's ultimately that's the way I would see it. I don't know, Nick, if you see it another way.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. I think it's really important though that there's no exclusions. Well, I'm sort of eating my own words because earlier I said, maybe people who have burnt those bridges shouldn't be a part of it. But I suppose everybody deserves a second chance to an extent. But yeah, it should be open to all.
PJ, do you have anything?
I mean, like I said before, the more people from different organisations, the better, covering all the genres. People who this will actually affect.
Okay. So, what needs to happen next? Like, it's all nice that we're all sitting here talking about starting up an Australian eSports Federation, but making it happen is a bit of a harder thing. What do you think needs to happen?
Zorine's asking the hard questions. Get it done.
We need to somehow build a foundation. That's ultimately the biggest thing.
Do you mean, like, should we call meetings with all the major organisers and teams and see what they think first?
Yeah. I think that would definitely be a start. I'm definitely keen to, once we get over this, to hear from what you guys have to say about it or what your feelings are, because obviously we've been in esports quite a long time and we see it obviously quite differently to all of you. So it will be interesting to see what you guys say. But yeah, I mean, it's like, building that foundation by, having those meetings, but see, the problem is it is quite expensive. It is quite expensive to find the time as well. So I know Nick's always generally on the go. I'm generally around as well. So it would be hard, and trying to figure out who exactly you should have at least, let's not say just one, but one person needs to sort of form it. It's hard to say that it'll just be us three come together, all right, let's do it, here we go, because it's not going to happen that way. It's got to be someone sort of got to take the step out of their daily life and say, look, this is the way to do it.
I think just echoing on that sort of form, just pure to the fact that we're so busy at this point, it does need to be an independent person who makes the right moves to sort of step it up. But in the same token, I don't think it should be 100% an independent person who necessarily runs it.
No.
Maybe Zorine, that's where perhaps media or plays an important role in adjudicating that. But then also, as Lloyd mentioned, who represents the people? It's not obviously your team managers who are in the gamers. Does there need to be a union or something for players? How do the players then have a voice to participate in this federation?
Do you think, with the way the scene is, we really need a union, or like that?
I think a union's not the right word, but how would you channel the voice of an entire community into?
Crowd is saying.
But then is it a one union for every single franchise and every game, or do you split it up?
You can't just do one union for everybody, unfortunately, because it's a complete
StarCraft
different community.
union, eSports player union.
There's a question over there.
Oh yes, sure. I think that the enforcers have wireless microphones about. There's one here. Okay, I'll bring it down to you.
Wow, this is dynamic.
Sorry, yeah. How much power are you guys willing to give up to do this?
It's a good question.
I mean, team immunity's kind of represented the highest level of a lot of games. You have I don't follow league, but you guys are kind of at the top level of a lot of this stuff, and to do this properly, you guys have to get a step back.
That's right. And I mean, that's the point I was trying to make, is that someone does need to step back and take it. And look, I mean, I've thought about it. I've thought about making this work, But again, we haven't taken the baby steps really of all just coming together and just having a talk about it. I mean, this is the real first time that I've been able to talk to Nick and PJ and then obviously the community about it. But yeah, I mean, that's something that would happen, is there would sort of need to be a step back to take 3 steps forward to do this.
Well, that's where I sort of think that rather, if anything, if the person who's going to be sort of starting it or leading it is a third party, then it needs to be someone like that, so it's not us controlling what's happening. If anything, then they're adjudicating what we're doing. We need to fall in under those guidelines just as much as anyone else. So it shouldn't be top down or anything like that.
So are you willing to put, the money you guys are making in the industry behind the foundation, if you guys are part of it?
First of all, I just want to laugh at the money that we're making.
You point out it's expensive. It's not cheap.
No.
Like, there has to be, at some point, someone's got to make a decision to finance it.
Well, I'll just touch on that point as well. Money that we're making, esports in Australia is still a very, very small thing, and I don't think we're quite at that point where we're just not at that point where we're sacrificing a huge deal. I mean, ACL, I still lose a lot of money every event we run. It's still hugely a passion project. I'm not sure, I can't speak for team management at all. But I can say from an ACL standpoint that, that's not really part of the equation for us.
Should clarify that esports as well isn't making a lot of money globally. If you look at places like MLG and DreamHack and stuff, those guys have been around for like 12 years plus, and they have been doing some hard work. And now they're probably turning some profit, you'd presume. But I mean, we're talking about esports in Australia. I mean, it's only really picked up in the last couple of years, so we've got a lot of growing to do, a lot. And I'd say publishers as well. I mean, I wouldn't think there'd be many publishers making a lot of money as such. It's such a new concept. It's such a new... it's so new. I mean, people don't know how to sort of go ahead, but that makes it exciting as well, because you can sort of go your own way. So,
just to touch on that as well, the whole monetization of the industry, that's why one of the reasons why I believe so strongly that the Esports Federation in Australia should exist, because it will help with that sort of thing, and to facilitate broadcast analytics sharing and the sharing of statistics and figures, which are powerful in gaining sponsors. I think an Esports Federation would really help to move that along. I see we have someone else with a question over there. Is there another wireless microphone we've got around? Just this one?
Thanks. Just a question about the content and the quality of Australian esports. Do you think that we actually have enough sort of quality players and stuff to support such a thing? Because I watch a fair bit of esport, and I can only name really maybe one StarCraft player from Australia who competes on a global level.
Yes.
You go on, Lloyd.
Sorry. To answer your question, yeah, I do. I honestly do. I think the problem is that a lot of Australians aren't given the chance to go overseas and compete. Which makes it hard, and obviously we do try and send players over as much as we can to give them experience, but there are obviously a lot of players out there that I'm sure are just as good, if not can possibly even be better, but they do need to put the time in for it. And at the moment, I mean, I like to see esports as a hobby, really. The only way you really want to become a pro gamer in Australia is you've got to enjoy what you're doing, and if you don't enjoy the game you're playing, then there's no point playing it or playing it at a competitive level. But no, definitely, I honestly believe, and from Team Immunity, that we do have the potential. Australian gamers do have the potential to to rise up to the challenge. Like, look at the League of Legends. I think we have, 600 teams or something?
603 teams. After
603 teams.
845 teams registered. That's over 4,000 people with 4 days' notice.
Yeah, there you go. So, and that's obviously just one game. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I think for the FIFA tournaments, like last year, when they were going around, I think they had over a few thousand players wanting to compete. So, definitely. But again, it comes down to the fact that a lot of people don't know about these tournaments, or it comes down to the awareness, and creating this federation would help, definitely.
I just want to touch on that too, Lloyd, in the fact that when a lot of teams just don't get the opportunity, like whether or not we're at that level, I assume you're talking about Moonblade. He's obviously a really well-known player. But let's not forget MLG Dallas last year, Gamecom NV and Immunity, there were like 6 or 7 players who went over for StarCraft. They went to MLG, and I think it was 6 or 7 of them came in the top 40. They ranked really high, so that's quite an achievement. A lot of people, Americans, Koreans, whoever was there, don't get that high. It's just that we don't hear about it, and they don't get that opportunity enough. If they were to go to every single MLG, I guarantee you their results are going to improve, because they're continually playing against people at that level. They just don't get that opportunity here.
And I also think it's not the fact that Australia has a lack of talented players, but also that, there's very rarely a higher goal for players to reach towards. Say you win a local level tournament, what happens after that? That's it. You won it, and you don't really get to go anywhere else after that. I mean, obviously it's starting to change, with Riot introducing their Australian service here, and of course Blizzard doing the WCS, Oceanic and Australia tournaments here. But all the same, people don't hear about those happening a lot of the time, and it's very hard. And on top of that, Australian internet sucks. It's very bad compared to our international friends. I think we have another question out back. Yes?
In regards to just getting the word out and working out exactly how much involvement the Australian community would put into this, something like online forums and say like booths open at things like PAX and Comic-Con and Supernova and stuff like that, just to sort of spread the word and get people at least educated on the fact that we are trying to open or bring up something like an eSports federation in Australia. Do you think that in itself would help, or?
Well, when I submitted my pitch for this panel, my goal was to get people to start thinking about working together, and to start, for organizations to start really trying to go, this is actually a good idea. Australia could do so much more if we all worked together. I know that sounds very corny and cheesy, but that's really what I think. So my intention for this panel was to start moving things and start getting gears in motion. I don't know if my panelists feel the same way, but I certainly hope so.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to say, though, just also on that point, that I feel that the media in the last 3 years have been really slow to jump on the esports bandwagon, and that's affected us as well. So unless you're on that online forum, and you're a diehard fan, a lot of regular gamers who might have an interest in watching esports don't hear about it. And I feel that's changing now. So obviously people like Zorine are reporting on it. And there was an article in The Age the other day. But the more articles we see in mainstream media will really help. But to be honest, I've wanted to hit my head against the wall a few times for the lack of exposure that we do get. But that is changing.
Can I just add something onto that as a media representative? Sometimes it goes both ways. We don't get sent the press releases or the information we need. I've had people approach me 24 hours before an event to ask us to cover it, and I just say we can't. We really can't do this. We don't. We need more notice. So I think communication needs to go both ways, to both media and event organisers. There's another question out back.
Sorry, just touching on the talent pool of Australia and how we promote our players. I actually think that, sorry, I shouldn't go into opinion territory, but do you think that if we had a if we had just an esports focused media that does things like interviews and does all sorts of things just to promote esports within the esports community, that would help to draw more people in. And I'm not aware, but does this exist already? And how effective do you think it would be?
I think that's a really good point you just raised. God, I'd love that idea. I would love it. The thing is, at the moment, there are a lot of different places to get articles or interviews or whatever it may be, and this does come down to the fact that, like, we all have objectives and we all need to reach those goals, and so we do produce our own content or media or whatever it is. But yeah, having a hub like that, whether it is this actual federation website or not, would be great. Like, we do have, I'm sure you've heard of places like Cybergamer and Got Games, or Got Games I think is gone now, the GT eSports, and yeah, I mean, exactly, Facebook and GameSpot as well. So,
well, there's an interesting point actually. I've got a question for the audience. I feel like the evolution of online streaming has really changed the way we interact with esports and content. I want to know actually how many people still search for articles written on Gamers Online, because if you look at the front page of MLG now, it's straight to Twitch videos. Do you guys still read articles about esports? Like, do you search it? Show of hands? Okay, but not as many as I thought.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, to answer your question a bit further, like, mainstream sites like GameSpot, we have started covering esports. I do believe that it is a bit harder to find. It is a little bit separate from the front page of the site. It is, the URL itself it's GameSpot/esports. And, we've tried again to give local players some spotlight on the site as well. We're starting up Meet the Pro series and such, but even so, those videos and features that we do, sometimes they don't track very well, and it's really hard to get the word out, which I think kind of contributes to the problem. So there needs to be a way to really bring everything together and have the exposure that the scene really deserves. I think we have another question out front. Somebody had their hand up here earlier.
Hi. I'm not too sure how it really works with esports overseas, with the big places like Korea, where StarCraft's obviously kicking ass. But I know, like, all I tend to hear about locally is companies getting shut down, like development companies. So I'm wondering if maybe you guys feel that has an effect on the lack of publicity for Australian esports. Just the fact that you hear more. Indie gaming's getting pretty big, I guess, at the moment, but some of the bigger companies in Australia are constantly being shut down. That's all I'm kind of seeing. So just curious on your thoughts on that.
I think it's more about, I think what's going against us is our time zone in some ways. I mean, that's probably our biggest thing. If we're going to stream something in our peak time, we're limiting our viewership quite a bit, and pretty much not a lot of the world is actually going to get to see our people, our esports athletes, if you want to say that. So that means they get less exposure, which means, I guess, they don't, I guess the audience doesn't really care as much as they could. So I think time zone is a big one. Also, being so far away from everything else.
Yeah,
like the closest US is still 12 hours away at least, which so it sort of limits the opportunities of international talent coming down here as well. So we have a few things going against us, I suppose, but
and the cost as well.
Cost.
Yep, yeah. Cost is a big one. Nick, did you have something that you wanted to add to that? Okay, we've got more questions. Someone down the back, yes?
Hi there. So, as a part of esports, one of the real big keys to supporting the local scene and making it grow to a esports or professional scene is either large amounts of sponsorship or first-party support. So this is shown by Blizzard and Riot. They're putting in a huge amount of prize money into the championships and so on. So we can rely on first-party publishers, of course. But sponsors, they've been very tentative with supporting or sponsoring the local scenes. They haven't been throwing out as much money as potentially Korea or US and so on. And partially this is probably because they're not getting as much value out of sponsored or professional players. What do you think these very skillful players can do to add more value or to distinguish themselves for sponsors and promotions and so on?
Lloyd, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Nick just wants me to answer it. Oh God, that's a really good question, man. It's a tricky one because, like, obviously as a team manager, we try and maximise as much value as we can out of our players, and that's going off what the sponsors want. But it's a hard one because we are trying our best. It is working. Obviously, it's not working, I guess, to the standard that we would all like. But I guess time will tell. And creating this sort of federation might open the doors to that. Again, because sponsors have been burnt in the past, it has closed a lot of doors for not just teams, but also for organisations as well for running events. And those sponsors then go talk to the other sponsors about it, and that's what, and then it just goes from there, and then eventually, Chinese whispers later, we hear about it. So yeah, I mean, it is about adding value to our players, but also the community as a whole as well. You guys might, I don't know if you've seen, but when there was that Call of Duty tournament in Europe, I think on YouTube the video got, I think it's over 4 million, 5 million views, and it's just one team abusing the other team, and they love it. The media love it because it puts esports in a bad light, and unfortunately esports has been put in a bad light over the past few years. We can all adhere to that. Yeah. And that is what makes it difficult. And so having some sort of foundation, some guidelines that says players can't be racist or can't swear or whatever the guideline is, will add value to it. So, but
I will actually segue a little bit there because I know the question was about players adding value for sponsors. How we've sort of taken it from an organiser's point of view at ACL and everything we do for Blizzard and whatnot is we have been trying to make something big of those players through what we can do physically at our events. So we've had a massive focus on improving our production so that we can try and mirror a lot of those other leagues like MLG and ESL. So even though we're not directly responsible for the players, we provide them with the events. From our point of view, to try and add value to the sponsors is to try and make a name for those players by giving them, the nice lighting and the booths thanks to Blizzard, and then really capturing those moments with our production crews. So we've invested heavily in a lot of tech for cameras and whatnot, but I think that's sort of the little sort of crossover between where teams and organisers are trying to make something big of the players to add value for those sponsors.
I just wanted to also add, in terms of the sponsored players question, I can't speak for sponsors themselves, but I know when media are looking to cover players, the players with the largest following are not necessarily the most skillful ones. I'm sure, like you guys know of a former Evil Geniuses player, Idra. He wasn't always winning games, but he was very popular and he had a very big following. And players need to know how to market themselves to really appeal to sponsors, because the more followers you have and the more exposure you can give to sponsors, which I think is another thing that's really important to consider. I think we had another question down over there somewhere. Someone had their hand up for a long time.
So you've established that the eSports federation entity or organization is going to take a lot of time and money. But starting it up sounds like a chicken and egg problem. How do you get people to start working for it without the money, and how do you get the money without an established quality product?
Well, I think a lot of esports people who are working in Australian esports are already doing it not for the money. I mean, like hardly anyone is making money. So, you know, the whole thing's fueled by passion. And I think with enough passionate people, it won't be that hard to start up. Just need to have someone who wants to be, you know, who wants to organise and be the one to step up and get everybody together. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I don't think the money part is really, you know, it shouldn't be a selling point, if anything. Got more questions?
In the States, there used to be like sort of, over the past couple of years, a lot of feuding between, say, the fighting game community and the esports community. Are there sort of culture clashes between genres, between games at like that sort of micro level that you can't take out?
Yeah, I'm willing to take that one actually, because my business partner who runs a casual LAN in Queensland, LAN Smash, JB, has worked heavily with a lot of the fighting game community in the past. Interestingly enough, in Australia, the fighting game community itself is even quite segregated between states. But the one thing that JB said to me about the fighting game community and why they're so different to the esports community is purely going right back to basics. Fighting game community, you don't play it online. So you look at StarCraft, you play it online, you're sitting at home and you're by yourself. You don't need to go out anywhere. The fighting game community is so close-knit because they want to play right next to each other and button mash, and there's this massive sense of, you know, help. So there is a bit of a gap between regular esports and fighting game community. I don't think it's as strong here in Australia as it is in the States. How to sort of get over that? I don't think it's as much of an issue for us, but it's just there is a culture difference. I agree with that, but I think that the guys in Melbourne here, obviously Shadaloo, who run the fighting game community, have already sort of embraced other esports by having FIFA competitions and PC gaming things as well. So I think we're okay here in Australia with that kind of division.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yep. Another question? Down the middle there.
Hi, how you doing? Just going from the feedback in the room mostly, the biggest problem seems to be exposure and actually getting your brand out there and advertising. Like you mentioned, our time zone's a big problem. I just want to know what your ideas are to get around these sort of things, especially the representative from Blizzard, who may know more than the guys who run the teams, or because obviously you've got big involvement with those guys and they're pretty good at it. So
can you just say the first part? You were just a little bit quiet.
Mostly the biggest problem was the exposure and advertisement of esports in general. Like, I know most Australian events, I won't know there's one on until I'm flicking through Twitch and I'm like, oh, that's an Australian event, so I might flick on it. I don't know if that's everybody else.
Do you follow esports?
I do, StarCraft. Most of
Just StarCraft mainly?
Mainly, yeah.
I'll just speak from experience, because the last time when we did WCS, very much part of my job was to promote the tournament. So we did that through all the blogs. So if you're on Battle.net, say, if you went to the StarCraft site, you'd know it'd be coming up that weekend. We actually did it through social media as well. So we have a local Twitter address, Blizzard_ANZ, plus our StarCraft Twitter as well. We also, leading up to the event 6 weeks out, we took a sample of players. I think it was Legionnaire. We did Rossi, one from each race, and Moonblade, and we did interviews with them, so we sort of panned it through so you knew what was going to come. So I think we covered it well, and we could probably do it even better now with some of the client stuff we can do. But, we can do our networks, but people need to spread that themselves as well. I mean, Team Liquid, obviously it is pretty much the place to go when you're thinking about streams. I don't know about you guys, that's where I go. Maybe we need something like that in a smaller sort of form, but for all games. Since we've got a smaller community, we could probably fit it all into sort of one. So I'd be looking at that. It would be something positive to get out of this.
Definitely.
Just echoing that thought on Blizzard, I think Blizzard actually are one of the few that do a really great job at promoting their events. I find some of the other publisher events are just dropped on us, and 6 weeks out we're organising it, and then 1 week before or a couple of days before it's happening. So I understand that you might miss a lot of key events, which is interesting. But on the flip side, I think maybe a website that is calendar based for esports that has a list of upcoming Australian events could be beneficial.
But this is the biggest point. It needs to be updated and it needs to be fresh. Because I'm just talking from an audience sort of point of view, if I go to a website and it's out of date or one little bit of information is wrong, I probably won't go back. So it needs to be updated, needs to be correct. So you would need people from different games or different genres to actually be the person in charge just to make sure that it's all updated. So, but that's where media comes in as well. Then you could use it as a media tool.
That's right, and as I was saying before, we'd love to report more on these events and such. We just need the information to be fed through, and everyone to be talking to each other, so that it all gets out there and the exposure that it deserves. I think we had someone over there.
Just a suggestion on an alternative way to get off the ground. It sounds like it might actually be pre-lined up to a Kickstarter type model. I'd be keen for getting in on the ground floor, being a founding member or whatever at a lowish tier donation, but you could have sponsors come in at slightly higher tiers, and with the goals as you go along, you could start off with a web presence, then the sort of awareness campaigns, and then depending on how successful it is, build from that. Just another thought there.
Good idea.
It's a really
idea.
No.
Is there no question? Yes, up the back.
Hi. So in the past, we've seen that the pro circuits generally had a few more games kind of in the mix, but whereas these days it's kind of more focused around your core games like LoL and StarCraft, still with a few others in the mix, but not as prominent. Do you think that going into the new generation of kind of games, do you think it's going to be easier to attract media attention now that there's going to be more big name games coming out, getting moved to PC and whatnot, or do you think it's kind of more achievable currently where we've only got a very selected amount of games being covered?
Well, I think for media, I think it is a little bit easier if there's a smaller pool of games to choose from. But at the same time, even if there were new games introduced into the esports scene, it wouldn't be that much of a problem because, all the news would live on one hub anyway, and it'd all get the same amount of exposure. So I don't think there being a larger pool of games would really present a problem to the media for exposing it. What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
Well, we don't really see that many huge games come out. There's that are really competitive. Probably the latest one, well, except the millions of Call of Duties and Battlefields. But probably the most recent is Dota 2, I guess, which just came out of its beta stage. But LoL would probably be, Counter-Strike Go, which was last year. But yeah, we're not really seeing a lot of competitive esport natured games coming out, and I think I can see the community, you guys, really focusing on these games that we have at the moment and just building from there. In the end, it's up to you guys. It's what games you want to play. You guys are the dictators. So.
I also think it's because these games have such an established audience already and people are comfortable with them. They're not willing to invest the extra time to learn something new or even start watching something new because, if you've invested so much time already, you're just going to keep following the game that you're already quite interested in, and finding time. It's all about trying to grab eyeballs. So yes.
Yeah, I've got something to add on that because I'm actually come from a console background. I'm not sure how many people in the room here follow console esports. Anyone? Yeah, no one.
Yeah,
okay. So. For me, I played Halo 1 competitively back in the day, and I think it's a big challenge for us from a console point of view because when these new titles just keep coming out, and they make all these changes and revisions, then it's really hard the whole game changes. So Halo is my most recent example. I'm a massive Halo fan, and we've just dropped it from our circuit. We started ACL with Halo. And to leave that behind now because the player base don't like the game that they love is really sad. So that's why I think, obviously, for ACL as an organisation to be successful, we need to follow those big franchises that are going to be around for a long time. I mean, StarCraft has been around forever. Everybody knows it and loves it. And League of Legends is now starting, to build a bit of traction. A lot. But it hasn't been around for as long, you know what I mean? But it's starting to get that big player base. And that's why you can tell you can get more interesting stories from that by sticking with it rather than changing, which is quite hard for console. But Call of Duty, every iteration is pretty much the same. So that is actually what's working to its benefit, though. Yeah. Whereas Halo, they changed it.
We had another question down the middle over here. Yep.
Hey, I just want to excuse my cold, but anyway,
That's
so
all right.
I know in the StarCraft community there's quite a large actual community sense, and we all get along together, and we run off of one website, se2sea.com, and this website is generally where we'll find all information StarCraft related, where it's news to the game or just tournaments in Australia or what's happening overseas. I know that I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure there isn't any sort of something similar for these other big games that we have in the Australian circuit with ACL and all the other sort of things. So, is there anything that's already set up for League of Legends, Call of Duty, or any of your other games that we have, and is who's the onus on to set that up for that? Is it the community to set up a place like that, like the SC2SCA.com, or is it on these other bigger companies to do that, to set it up and lay the groundwork for that to happen? For example, with the Australian Esports Federation.
Do you want to take that on?
Do people want publishers just to do control? I don't know. I think it should be more community based, or at least people working within the community, because then it's a little bit more objective. And what do you think?
Well,
yeah,
I
that's
can
the way I
just
see it. I mean,
tell you from, we were once a Halo website. We now run tournaments for all games, but nobody from League of Legends looks at our website unless there's a tournament that we're running. Same with Call of Duty, they're all on Cybergamer. So there's an incredibly fragmented scene for these online communities. They do exist. I think League of Legends are a bit all around the place, but maybe now that a lot of people have jumped on the Riot forums, but some are on Cybergamer. Yeah. It is definitely community driven, and I don't know how the Federation would be able to sort of fix that. It's really, really difficult to move people. People like to be where they are. You'll never get off SC2SCA.
I mean, it's the social aspect as well, and I don't think the Federation should touch that social aspect as such. If you enjoy going on a forum and you're a regular poster, and that's cool. I think maybe if we were thinking of a portal as such, it should be clear, sort of concise information that you sort of go and pick up the details of what's happening. I mean, if you want to do forums and people want to chat, that's cool as well, but you shouldn't be taking away from existing communities, I think, anyway.
Agree.
Looks like we have time for one more question. The fellow down the middle has his hand up for a while.
Hi, I'm just wondering, you mentioned earlier that Riot had released Australian servers for LoL earlier this year, and Valve done the same for Dota 2. Just wondering what your thoughts are on how important local Australian servers are for Australian esports.
Do you want me to take that? I think it's definitely important, and I think it's something that isn't off the table. So
You're speaking on behalf of Blizzard when you say that? Or?
I mean, we're always discussing things like this, so we can't obviously say at the moment. And I think, in the Blizzard point of view, if we have something to say, we will definitely tell you. But
I think it's very important for the community, for these developers to get on board and help establish a community in Australia. And it would be nice if Blizzard would just chuck out $1 million and run a massive Australian tournament. But
$1 million?
Yeah.
Let me get my checkbook.
We'll only start at one. But yeah, I mean, no, it is definitely it's definitely, as going back to the beginning when we were talking about baby steps, it is definitely a step in the right direction. Something that we can keep going with, and get Blizzard, other parties on board, and run further tournaments with them and with these big. Like, I mean, obviously the biggest thing is the prize pool to a lot of people, and like seeing like this one here in PAX with $40,000. I think it's $40,000 for first.
It's $40,000 pool. Yeah.
So it's big money, and then you can to go overseas to win millions of dollars. It's definitely a step in the right direction.
I just wanted to add on to that. I think it is important that we get Australian servers. I mean, I know with certain established servers that we have already, the companies weren't actually looking to implement those for the Oceania region, but people made it like such a fuss in the forums that they had to take notice. So I think Australian gamers need to speak up more as well if we want local servers and make sure we get noticed. I mean, internationally, we're probably quite low on the priority pool when it comes to introducing local servers for the Oceania region, and playing with 10 ping is definitely nice, and I think it's something that players should have when they're playing a game. They should be able to enjoy the full experience and play it the way it was meant to be played. Cool. Well, I guess that wraps up our panel for today. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out, and I'm really surprised that we had this many people, so thank you, everybody. And and I'd also like to thank each of my panelists, PJ from Blizzard, Nick from ACL, and Lloyd from Team Immunity for taking part in this today. And this panel will be recorded on video and uploaded to GameSpot, so you can find it there if you wanted to watch it again. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.